Merhaba, assalamu alaikum. And shukran, thank you for having me here today. Thank you to Salam and Sue for this, and to the Muslim public affairs community for this amazing award. But more importantly, I want to thank you all for using this night and your platform to elevate my colleague and friend Jamal Khashoggi, may his soul rest in peace, to elevate his words and his work. When I was invited to come here tonight, some months ago, I don't think we or I had any idea how global Jamal's story would become, and how many people from all walks of life, from all over the world, would join in our calls of accountability and for justice for Jamal. This is not a story that we ever imagined that we would have to face, much less be a part of. I'm trying to remember the words of the song that we just heard, standing in the eye of the storm, heart being brave, heart being bold. I'm trying to remind myself of that right now, especially when I have to be honest and I have to say that I still feel like I shouldn't be here before you today. I shouldn't have to be speaking for Jamal. Jamal deserved every award for courage even before he was silenced. I don't think the world understands how much he was giving up to write for us at the Washington Post, between having to leave his home, having to divorce his wife, having to have pressure on his children. He was already having their life sucked out of him, and I stand here before you still thinking that his life should not have been taken, that he should be here addressing you all today. Some of you in this room knew Jamal. Many others were following his work. And many of us who knew him, and many of us who were following his work, knew that he wanted the best for his country, that he wanted to guide Saudi Arabia's leadership to do what he thought was best. In his first piece for the Washington Post, as you guys saw in the video, he said that Saudi Arabia and the Saudi Arabians deserved better than to live under conditions where freedom of thought and conscience are increasingly being criminalized. And in his last piece, he begged for the end of the cruel war in Yemen and for the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to restore dignity to the birthplace of Islam. While Jamal feared imprisonment, he never imagined that his opinions would be a death sentence. But I want to come back to this word, dignity. It's something that struck me. And again, Jamal wanted Saudi Arabia to live up to its promise, to be the leader of the Arab and Muslim world, and to stop the violence and the assault on political freedoms. He called for what so many around the world want, which is just the freedom to speak their minds without fear, the freedom to organize in collectives toward common human goals like reducing poverty, protecting and supporting women and children, and ending corruption. He just wanted for people to be able to have more of a say in their own lives. But by changing his mind and by moving from a regime insider to a strong voice, and calling for, again, human dignity for his fellow Arabs, he was surveilled and killed in the most undignified of manners. Much like Jamal warned of Saudi Arabia's loss of dignity as a leader in the Arab and Muslim world, we too here in the United States, I fear, we are facing a similar trajectory. America, which for so long has marketed itself as a protector of human rights and dignity, we're now facing an era where the United States is losing its global leadership and its place of dignity in a world that stands up for human rights. Under this administration, we've seen refugees and asylum seekers be demonized and their entry restricted. We've seen civil rights and protections in the realm of housing, education, police reform either left to stagnate or being actively rolled back. And we've seen the Supreme Court uphold one of this administration's most odious campaign promises to halt the travel from Muslim-majority countries. In Jamal's case, this administration has decided to say publicly that arms sales, that money, are more important than the life of a man who only wanted to start a new life with the new freedoms that he had in the United States with the love of his life, Attiah. And I would say, in my opinion, because I'm allowed to have opinions, because I work on the opinion section, it's kind of nice. So, don't believe what they say. I'm allowed to have opinions, right. I would say America's dignity fell further in the past few days when the president of this administration used his platform to attack a sitting congresswoman, Ilhan Omar, using Islamophobia to target her and by extension the Muslim community in a warped context of 9/11. And as I tweeted a couple of days ago, Ilhan Omar lies at the intersection of what so many in this country were taught to fear. She's Black, female, visibly Muslim, and immigrant, and most importantly, she is vocal. And I believe, my opinion is that we should stand with her, and I stand here before you today saying that you can count me as an ally to stand openly against Islamophobia and against these toxic these toxic fumes that are polluting our body politic and that are putting people's lives in danger. I'm gonna get to press freedom at some point, like I'm coming. As we say in my country, in Ghana, I'm coming to that point. Being here in LA, it's not lost on me that I'm in the city where the rapper Nipsey Hussle was thoughtlessly gunned down in front of his store in Crenshaw. A man who used his fame and his influence from hip hop to try to bring positivity to his own community. And he was killed in the same week, actually, of the 6-month anniversary of Jamal's murder. And it's just struck me in the sense that Nipsey and Jamal were killed by the members of the very community that they wanted to help. And even as we speak now, we have activists who campaigned and marched in Ferguson all those years ago who are also dying and ending up dead right here on American soil. These answers as to why this happens, why is it that those who are trying to do the most good for their own communities end up being silenced, is one I can't necessarily pretend to know. But I do know a couple of things. I know, first of all, and here's where press freedom comes into this, that the truth is powerful, and the truth is a weapon that though so many people want to suppress and want to silence. And freedom of the press and freedom of conscience is integral to our societies and to a healthy, functioning democracy, but it is something that we cannot take for granted. And if there's anything that we've learned in the last few years in this country, and I would say in even Saudi Arabia and across the world, is that we cannot take our rights and we cannot take our freedoms for granted, that we must fight for them every single day. Every day. Because with progress, there's always backlash, and we must remain vigilant, whether it is safeguarding our rights to vote, whether it is safeguarding and speaking out for when journalists are killed. And as we know, and as you've heard today, it is a scary, dangerous time to be in my line of work. But we do it because we believe we want better for our countries and better for our communities. And we recognize, those of us who are on the front lines, I didn't think I was going to be this directly on the front line, but we realize that lives are on the line, and we cannot take these freedoms for granted. There's another thing I do know, and that is, again, that the fight for justice and for the betterment of our communities, to me, is very much like a baton race. that we all have the choice to be a part of. Every single one of you in this room have a choice whether or not you want to be a part of that movement for change and for a better world. But when one of these runners falls in this race for justice, or their leg of the race is done, it is our duty to pick up from the point where they left off. By choosing a different path and speaking out for reform, Jamal Khashoggi was a runner in that race. Nipsey Hussle, and trying to empower his community and his hood, he was a runner in that race. The activists in Ferguson were runners in that race, and there's so many untold activists. Jamal Khashoggi in Saudi Arabia, who is fighting, and her family is fighting a brave fight in speaking out for her in her quest to just advocate for the right for women to drive, to have the freedom to move freely. She is sitting in a jail cell right now. She is a runner in that race. They may have fallen or otherwise have finished their leg, but in Jamal's case, and all of these cases, Lujain, Essama Zamel, an economist who was also jailed in Saudi Arabia for daring to speak about Vision 2030, the economic plan in Saudi Arabia, we all have a duty to pick up their batons. In Jamal's case, when it comes to the Arab world, it means platforming Arab and Muslim voices. And that is something that myself and the Washington Post is committed to. We were committed to this before, but in the wake of what has happened to Jamal, we have doubled down on our commitment. We've announced the Jamal Khashoggi Fellowship, in which we give fellowships to visiting columnists from the Arab world to be able to speak truth to power about their communities as they see it. Picking up Jamal's baton would mean being supportive of constructive debate and dialogue. It would mean reading his work, and again, in particular, pressuring for the release of other Saudi reformers who sit in jail today, some of them for nothing other than just daring to have an opinion. It would mean calling for the end to the war in Yemen. It would mean calling here in America. It would mean, again, pressuring against the rollback in civil rights that we have seen. It would mean standing up for our Black, brown, female, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, all of our friends who find themselves living with under these oppressions that we are seeing that have been unleashed in the last several years. It means speaking in we, as we said already tonight. It means including a vision for a future that is inclusive and where people can live to the best of their potential. We must carry on Jamal's work. We must continue the race. I know I am committed to continue this race. I did not imagine I would be in this position ever. But I'm here now, and I know what I must do. The Washington Post is committed to this case, but we need your help. I need your help, and I need for everybody in this room and anybody who is watching to assist us and continue to demand for accountability in his murder, and to continue an end to this cynical idea that Arab peoples, Black and brown peoples around the world are not ready for democracy, they're not ready for human rights, or that we have to choose, as I was speaking today, choose between dictators and extremists. No, that is not the choice, that cannot be the choice. And so with that, again, I say we're all in this together. We all must continue the race and pick up the baton. May Jamal's death not be in vain. I thank you all so very much for this award, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm still in this. And may Jamal rest in peace. Thank you.